So let's start to not lose time, because I'm not sure how long it will take, so I get my signs from here. Talk will be in English, so let's jump in. I would like to put some thoughts into what it takes to become a great developer. So I try to explain a little bit what I see there and what I think it's what makes a great developer, and we try to get to this journey together, to the answer of this together. Before we start, I would like to give a disclaimer. This is all of my personal observations. It's everything from myself, and it can be perceived differently from anyone else here in the room. But before we start, maybe I should tell a little bit about myself. So once upon a time, in a small village in the middle of Germany, there was a child born named Christian. Okay, we skipped the not important parts, and so he ended up as a PHP developer in a startup called Spreadshirt. A little bit more you find here. I'm currently working as a CTO of Oberlo / senior lead for Shopify. Long story there. If you want to know more about this story, just come afterwards to our booth out there. But due to the lack of time, I will skip this part. Why I'm here now, and why can I even talk about this? And one thing I did in my career, I talked a lot with developers, with engineers, and I think I make a rough calculation. I talked with minimum more than 700 developers for various reasons, in various kind of stages of the interview process, on kind of conferences, wherever I meet them, but mainly in the interview process, to find new people for the teams which we have in the companies. And what I'm trying to do there, whenever I have an interview, a chance to talk to a developer, I try to find any kind of sign that this is a good developer. So we also to find out what is the difference there, and also look for kind of signs of this could become a really great one. Let's step a bit into it. First, I think what we need to define is what is a good developer. So before we start looking what makes them great, we need to just first have a clear definition of what is a good developer. And before we start there, just to check the audience, who of you is a developer in a company? Wow, it's around 90%. And some people who didn't say, but not sure what they are. What are the others? When you're not developers? Cool. Manager of development teams? Okay, then you are, okay. You should be developers before, right? So sadly, apologize that some of the following stuff will be familiar with you and should be familiar with all of you. But let's dig into what is good software. I think that's if we want to figure out what is a good developer, we should look at what is good software. So we start this. That's my angle I took, and it's easier to define. So let's look what is good software. And we talked about, or in my career, we really built a lot of good software. We built a lot of scrappy software. We built a lot of crappy software. And I was in different companies where we built software differently, but we always tried to build good software. So let's come up with a good definition. And I also based on my experience, I come up with a probably not quite recent one. It's like this. Good software is a microservice and event sourcing based agile serverless MVP with a predictive AI training trained by machine learning written in Clojure. Right? That's good software. If you have all this stuff in there, you have a good software. Maybe, maybe not. But it has a lot of buzzwords in one sentence. I tried to figure out what to put more, but that was already quite good. No, let's take a real look into it. What makes software good? And for me, again, remember this kind of disclaimer. For me, it's when the software is maintainable. And it can be others, it can be performant, it can be fast, it can be scalable, but number one thing for good software is it's maintainable. And now maintainability sounds a bit boring. And if you look at the definition of Wikipedia, it is actually quite boring sentence. So just read it. Software maintenance in software engineering is a modification of a software product after delivery to correct faults, to improve performance, or other attributes. Very boring. I tried to find a kind of a different kind of look into what is a maintainability or what is maintainable. And it's first adaptive. So this means modifying the system to cope with changes in the software environment. So that's what we see every day. There's a new version, there's a new dependency. I need to do something. There's there's a new database which we want to try out, which we should use now, and that requires some changes in my software. Perfective. That's another thing which happens every day in our life. There's a new user requirement coming in. There's improvement to an existing one, like based on a new user research. New users start using the system, and they have different kind of requirements. So I want to build something for them too. Then I have a corrective part, which is I find a bug, I need to fix it. That's the part which we all think first when we hear maintainable or maintenance. It's fixing bugs, but it's not the full story. And then the last piece is preventive, and this means building the software in a way that it avoids future problems or conflicts or bugs. Now, if you look in the statistic, what's happened in the actual teams, you see that 75% of all these kind of maintenance actions teams do happens in the first two pieces. So it means when I get changes in my environment, I get new dependencies, I get changes from the user. Damn user, why he always changes his mind? But I need to adopt to this, and I need to change my software. That's part of my maintenance job. I also have some bugs to fix. It's around 21%, and then the rest is this kind of preventive part of my work, which could be, in my understanding, a little bit bigger to make the second one a little bit smaller. But let's go a bit deeper. I tried to summarize this. What is our, it's a thesis I make. Maybe you disagree, but I think that for us as developers, change is the only constant thing in software development. So, and think about your daily life. Whatever you came in the morning, everything can be changed. Change requirements. Your boss came in and say we have to do this feature quickly because it's give us new opportunities. There is a bug which requires a change. So change is the essential part of your kind of work every day. And it will be in the future. There was no place that you say, now I can lay back and my system works perfectly and I can do 1 year nothing else and just playing computer games or something like this. That will not happen. Or I never thought. So maybe it happened somewhere, but not in the world I'm living. So going back to what is what makes it easier to maintain things and to keep up with changing, because this is the core behind maintainability, is the ability to change. And how you can do this as a developer. So you should look into yourself, and I think number one, which everybody tells you, is write clean code. And I think that's a perfect advice. You should think about writing the code as clean as possible. There are books out there. I will show the books right afterwards. But what are the main concepts written in this books about is one, readability, which allows your future self to read what you just did, to understand what you just did, or it allows the other people left and right to understand what you just did, or in the future when the change coming in, you have to look back and what the fuck did I wrote here, and then you understand when you write clean code, and then you can make a change. Also clean code means the code itself, even the smallest piece, is able to be changeable, to be taken out and replaced by a different implementation. So having good interfaces, having good kind of abstraction layer inside your code makes it very easy to do this. Don't try to bound your business logic with a framework logic because it's so convenient. Try to find a different way to separate this more because it will help you in the future. Simplicity is another big topic about clean code, and simplicity means that you should look at this is to find ways to decompose a complex part of your logic into smaller, more easy to read chunks. So trying to create multiple functions out of a big if block or a big switch and try to separate this out in different functions to make it easier to understand what's happening in this kind of big complex function. And if you achieve all this, you have achieved clarity, which is the ultimate goal for clean code. Clarity means, or clarity code means anyone can go there, look at the code which is there, and will understand it and be able to change it. And in general, low what the fuck rate. Everyone has read these two books, right? Who knows these books? Who read this book? At least one of these? The other ones, please do it. Start with clean code and then go with clean coder, or other way around. It doesn't matter. Again, we're still defining what is good software. Good software is changeable. means I can exchange like every piece of it. So it means I can exchange a class easily, just talk about this. I can exchange a library which talks to like a queue, for example. That's another thing, like make your software and your architecture in a way that you can replace one thing with another, having a different logging layer. Like you should not like change every piece in your platform. You should have an abstraction layer built in where you have like one kind of adapter and you just exchange this adapter. Think about this when you build software. Also infrastructure-wise, like when you want to replace like kind of your queue system, like it should be not the hardest thing in the world. Ideally, you change one part of your application and then you exchange this queue to another one. We have documentation. Who loves documentation? So, me either. So that's why like you just write the code in a way that the document itself. We come back to this clean code thing. You should document like where you should write something down is when you build like bigger pieces of it. So you build a component, you build like a part of the whole application, just describe this one. You don't need to describe like every method. That's bullshit and just like it consumes too much time. And no one will read it anyway. People will read code. When you have an API, that's a part where you need to document things because other people or other teams or like other applications needs to understand what you're offering and what is your contract and what is like your agreement between these both applications. And so there you need to invest time and to write the proper documentation. You need to document like things like your setup process. If like a new person joins the team, make it easy for them to start the thing. So document this part. And if you have like some general pattern in your team, in your organization, like this is something like a good candidate for writing things down. Same goes when you have like some basic architecture decision made. Good thing to write these down for future reference and then people join the team afterwards. Tests. I don't say anything here like tests is a mandatory thing. Automated tests in this case, not like a QA part which comes afterwards, which is also good, but you should write tests for your piece of code. Point. Think about monitoring, logging, and exception handling. And metrics, sorry. Exception handling is part of like logging. So what does this mean? Monitoring means like you know when something goes wrong. So this is like monitoring, you know when something failed, when something is not responding, you are aware of this, and you as a developer think about this. It's not that DevOps do it, or like the guy in the cellar like set up your machine, or like the guy who set up like your AWS instance, they will not do it. You have to think about like what you want to log, and how you want to log, and how you want to monitor things. Monitoring is another topic, like think about how you make it easy for yourself to understand what you log. So find a general format across all your applications or like all parts of your system which creates a log entry. Find a way to scale this and find a way to like tag these kind of things so that you makes sense. So try to group like log messages coming from the same component in a way that you can add a tag to it. Try to find a way to group a request and everything which happened inside this request or with the execution of this request to your platform by setting like a trace ID or something so you can follow this kind of event through your whole platform. And in the end, if you just look at the messages, you can filter all the messages by this kind of trace ID. And then you see like what's happened and where things go wrong. Metrics, it's like something, sometimes I see like developers don't think about metrics so much because they have logging and logging gives you some kind of information. They have like exception logging, application logging, or application metrics are also there. But metrics here is like about business metrics. How many orders do I date currently? How many emails are like sent in the last like minutes? And this gives you an indication like how your platform behaves at the moment. Not like logs tells you like in the past, you can look from the past backwards, but metrics give you a current state of your platform. And it's the quickest thing to see when things go wrong. Automate all the things. So everything which you do manually is a place for errors. So infrastructure, deployment, now your CI pipeline, like getting things from your local development into like production. All these kind of things should be automated. And as more automation you have there, the less you can fix it once when you find an issue there. Sometimes you find issues, but then this works. And it will not work. It will always work until you have a fundamental change there. So these are the main things about like what makes good software. So again, like I'm just asking, and it's like a bit provocative, but like who in this room thinks that he writes software in this way, and like consider all this kind of things? Okay. I hope all the others too are just like a bit too hideful, or like they just think about this. So what is then a great developer? Like, this sounds already really good. If I have this in place, like, wow, that's good software. It works, it's monitored, I see when things go wrong. Give me a clear picture of like what I need to do. I can change this, like it's all cool. Like, that's good software. Works with a team. So what makes a great developer then? I think that's kind of different kind of skill set. So let's look into it. Yeah, that was the slide for this question. So let's go and go one deeper. And the first thing like which I brought up is like style. And here I say it should not like come in and say like I have my style and like now please you all follow this. I think he needs to understand that there is a certain style in the way how the company works, in the way how he works, and there's a way where he needs to adapt to like what is like standard in the company, because it will not happen that like something like the company will adapt to what you define as your style. So the first thing like a great developer should do is like when you come to a company, say, show me where's your guideline for writing code, where's your guideline, what kind of pattern you use, where's the documentation about the architecture you have, so that I can follow, so I can adopt myself to like how you write code here. Because otherwise you have the situation that every developer writes code in a different way. They use different patterns, they do different approaches, and each of these approaches might be right, but it creates confusion and like hard to maintain code in the end. So if every developer decides to write things differently, it will be very hard. Another thing that's also like does not stop on the backend side or on the writing like backend code, it's still for or writing code at all. It's also like asking for where's style guide. Like I'm a front-end developer, I'm a UI developer. I want to understand like how you design things and like how can I follow this, that I like build the things in the right way. So looking for a style guide there, which also like helps collaborate between designers and like developers. So just an example, like this is a style guide from Ovolo, where it's clear defined like for anyone, like how like things look like, what kind of colors you use, and goes down to different kind of elements, and it goes down to like how a table look like and what kind of interactions you have there, what kind of filters you have there, and so on. So it's a lot of information, but like a great developer is really looking for this kind of proactively and say, like show me yours that I can adopt my personal style to like the one from the company. On the other way around, like a great developer will also like look and enforce to having such kind of style guides or guidelines how to write code, because he understands the importance of this kind of information. So here's like also something from Shopify where we have an internal handbook where like we define like how we write code. What are our thoughts behind this? We document the architecture there. There you find the documentation which needs to be written, and it's accessible by every developer, and like every developer goes through this handbook also in the beginning of their onboarding to understand like the fundamentals of like how we write software and why we write it in this way. Understand. It's another key aspect, and you will not see any kind of technical skill here. It's more like how you would call it social skills, but like I just want to emphasize how important this piece is. Like a great developer is someone who really tries to understand the whole feature. It's not like just, oh, I received this ticket, I received this task, I get a conversation with my product manager, and now I know what I'm doing. I just start doing it. Like he tries to really like find like the pieces which are not clear yet, and like try to ask proactively, hey, can you explain me a bit more why I should do it in this way? Because understanding the full why and the full side of the feature will help him to write a better software afterwards. He understands and like, okay, where can be a future change coming in, which I need to predict at some point, and where I might need to can prepare things. He's someone who's not like shy to like go to a business person directly and like ask them, because this person might have the most context about this feature. So he comes out of like this kind of office area and like really gets out of like their normal boundaries and like look for answers if they didn't find answers in the ticket or didn't find the answers from the product manager. It's also like other way around, like when other people didn't have the full picture of things happening in the engineering world, or they didn't understand the feature from the other side completely, it's like the responsibility of a great developer, or a great developer will take up there and say, hey, let me explain like the effect of like this change which we just need to implement, so that you have the full picture of like what will change for our users, what will change for the platform, and how this feature which you think is simple will really affect the whole platform and maybe like future development, or like how it affects performance and like how it affects our general work. So it's a boost. It goes in both directions, and then both times it's initiated by a great developer. Another thing that ties a bit into this, a great developer also needs to like really communicate. So he needs to be a good communicator. Like, I know that's sometimes hard to talk with like a non-engineering world because I didn't understand you. Then it's on you to find a way to explain it to these people. Like, there's always a way to simplify things more and to make it more understandable, find right like pattern, but really like a great developer needs to think about how you can communicate your problems to other departments, how you communicate your feature to other departments, and how you can show it to everyone. Also, like, you ask for feedback. A great developer is someone who's proactively asking for feedback from colleagues, from like the product, from like everyone who's around it to like improve himself. He wanted to get better. That's something which I come in a second. So they're really looking for feedback, embracing the feedback, and trying to get communicating this the best way. Also, when the people see that others struggle in in the communication, they can jump in and help and support there. Another thing, like, you need to be a constant learner, and a great developer is really looking forward to learn new things every day, and as much as possible. So you need to like not only stay ahead of your craft and your skills, so like the things you anyway like to do. You also need to like understand a bit like what is left and right, like how like your product is working, or like maybe like how like the business is working, and try to learn more about this. Not only looking into your small box of like things you already know. Try to understand a bit more. Like, when there are books which generally describes what the company is doing, or like where the company what kind of rules the companies follow, try to read these books. Even when it's like boring business in the first place, it can give insights like how the business come to ideas, and you can also think proactively. So you can be then someone who's like really understands things. Comes only with learning, and learning things which are not your favorite things to do. You know, it's easy to do, and try to learn the things which are harder for you and like you want to do different. Also a lot about asking questions. So I think that's also like a very important piece of it. That like, when you don't understand, you always ask questions. Like, when there's a bigger discussion or a panel or like an AMA, and you want to know something, you just ask. Like, you don't sit like shy in your corner and like don't ask and like say I might find a different way to get this information. Like, speak out loud and like talk about the problem, or like ask about the thing you want to know. But the most important thing, I think, for what makes a developer really great is like when he gains a lot of knowledge, he gains a lot of context, and he's really good that he's able to share this. So he's able to like teach others, to help others learning the same thing. He is someone who's sharing his knowledge and like making this other person left and right better. So he sees like someone's coming into the team and like automatically start mentoring this person, like helping him through pull requests, like giving the right comments. So it's really like helping others to get better. That's, I think, it's one of the key things which makes a really great developer. And like learning how this works, because it's not easy. Like, doing a proper pair session with someone who's more junior like requires really hard work. It's not a simple thing to do. It's like something you need to also learn, and how you need to be comfortable with. To not like overwhelm someone with your knowledge, to not overrule people with like your expertise, to really like find a way to communicate this properly to someone who's might be on a more junior track, or like who really is stepping up at the moment. So mentorship is like one of the key things I think it makes a really great developer, and that's what I want to show you. So just to summarize this, and like in my understanding, like a great developer has a decent style and is adapted and can be able to adapt to the style of the company. He seeks for full understanding of things. He is a good communicator, and he can learn all the time. He's a constant learner, and he is really good in mentorship and mentoring other people. So that's it. That's my view to what is a great developer. And yeah, now I'm open for all your questions. Any questions? Disagreements?
Did you think, on the first slide you said you think about all those things, yeah, it's your personal opinion and so on. Did you also search for references in literature or yeah, other persons telling the same, like that?
Actually not for like the core things, they're all coming from my observations. I have some research on like what is maintainability and like how like software is like what kind of different actions you do. Like this comes from a study, but like actually I didn't like investigate this deeper on like other things the same. Oh, it's a good thing, good point.
So the client will not pay for it. Where do you get the money and the time to do this? Make it in your free time, like community events, or where do you get the time for it?
So, client does not, like you mean for the learning aspect of like...
For the learning, for good software,
yeah.
for tests, for everything what we want.
Yeah, I think like the different things, like one learning new things, like it can happen in your free time, it can happen like before you sleep, just read the book. That's your, like, I even find time to do this, so like I think that's something which like should be in your nature, like somehow. So if you want to learn something, you will find time for it, even when it's like learning like other things which have no really direct relationship to development. You can also learn this kind of things. On tests and like they will take time. I think when you like just like be very objective and you look back how often you have to touch a piece or you often have to fix a bug which relates to you introducing a bug, and you just look at it for 1 year and like how much money you charge like this client for maintenance and fixing things, like maybe this is the money like you can like convince him and say like, look, we spent so much money on like fixing bugs. Maybe like you give me some more money to in the beginning to write proper tests, and like we save some money over the rest of the year. So like they're always like these kind of arguments which you can like talk with the client about. In the end, like we see when you get more familiar with writing tests, you don't see it as a burden. You don't see it as blocking you. They will be part of like your way of writing software, and you will see that you will write software in a different way, and it will be a more simpler way. So in total, you have like you will not like lose that much time. It's just the first probably half a year when you need to get comfortable with this of like writing maybe a test up front, or like just having like a proof of like that your idea works.
Okay, thank you.
What?
Are there some ways you can propose that you can share to encourage sharing and mentoring within a company?
Yeah. So what we do, we have a buddy program where like it's part of the onboarding itself. So people who want to do this and like or where we think that they are good in this, and normally the people who are good in this also like want to do this. Like they be assigned as a buddy to like a new joiner, so they're really helping in this place. And it really works. So people like really appreciate this, and like it's they say it's a really good thing and help them the most. If like you can also like have like tech talks where you can like start this and like see with people who are more sharing things, like really like appreciate this, and like also find ways to encourage others to do the same. Just give them something in advance, like something for this, when they do this extra effort, and like really appreciate this kind of things. More questions? There's one.
I was talking yesterday to some colleagues, and we were talking about myself. I was saying how much I don't like about developers that just come do their job and go home, and then we will start talking about it, and actually I do not like it, but I understand that if you, after a while, myself, I'm 33, single, I didn't buy a house, I don't have to pay every month any debt or anything. So to the thing about learning more. I'm still curious. I still want to learn. I still have the time and the power. But what happens if I have 2 kids and alone and a lot more stuff going on? So I might come back to my job, do the thing, and go back and enjoy my kids. So what would you say, how, in your experience, you're a bit older, I think, than me, so you've probably seen it, I don't know, or at least you're in a position that you have seen it probably more than me. How would you manage to keep learning, to get the motivation later on, when you're 40, 50, maybe later, to keep being so flexible, because you have to be flexible in this area.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know what, like, because I have no kids at home, so I can't really speak for this. So I would like give now probably like a wrong answer. What I do, like, because I also have not that much time, I just like try to listen to podcasts about this kind of thing, so you can also get input from there. Also over the day, and you can do this when you commute, or you can do this when you drive car. Like you always have this kind of times where you really, when you're interested in new things, like podcast is a great thing to do. And the other thing is, like, stay curious when you see like a library in your daily work. So you see and you want to understand like some piece of the framework, and like maybe like it's just dig and live into like understand what happened on the left and the right in the framework, and go deeper there and learn about like your technology use every day. Like there's probably like maybe like a meetup which you can attend, or like an event in your company going on where things get shared, and just like stand up and go there. The other thing is like. I'm not sure like what the company offers, but like for example, like at Shopify, we have this kind of on your own development, so you can like acquire things like which like books and stuff like this on like and you get reimbursed by company. You can go to conferences. So as part of your working hours or working time, like that's something you can like. I don't know if the company offers this, but this would also be like a thing which you should like also offer to this kind of. Like people which have not time in the evening to do this, maybe like give them some time like in their working day to do this, or like introduce a kind of 10% rule or 20% rule where people like have this time also over the week, or like in a one month, like one day for study things. I think it will not hurt you that much, but it makes your people more happy and like more engaged, because with learning new things, you also get a new like drive, and like you will stay more motivated. So, then, thanks a lot.